Before the Fellowship was the greatest story you've never heard. I'm Cameron.
I'm Dan.
And I'm Greg.
Join us as we read and react to the Silmarillion by J.R.R. Tolkien. Last time we began chapter 19. Beren alone escaped from Dorthonion. He made his way through the girdle of Melian and encountered Melian's daughter, Lúthien. The two grew in friendship, joy, and love. After Thingol heard of Beren entering Doriath, Luthien brought Beren before Thingol and Melian. Thingol threatened to punish Beren for trespassing, but Beren declared his love for Luthien. Thingol agreed that if Beren brought him a Silmaril from the crown of Morgoth, he would give him Lúthien's hand. And we're about to hear Beren's response. Today we continue chapter 19, beginning on page 168 of the second edition. But Beren laughed. For little price do elven kings sell their daughters, for gems and things made by craft. But if this be your will, Thingol, I will perform it. And when we meet again, my hand shall hold a Silmaril from the Iron Crown. For you have not looked the last upon Beren, son of Barahir. Then he looked in the eyes of Melian, who spoke not, and he bade farewell to Lúthien to Nuviel. And bowing before Thingol and Melian, he put aside the guards about him and departed from Menegroth alone. Then at last Melian spoke, and she said to Thingol, O king, you have devised cunning counsel, but if my eyes have not lost their sight, it is ill for you, whether Beren fail in his errand or achieve it, for you have doomed either your daughter or yourself. And now is Doriath drawn within the fate of a mightier realm. But Thingol answered, I sell not to elves or men those whom I love and cherish, above all treasure. And if there were hope or fear that Beren should come ever back alive to Menegroth, he should not have looked again upon the light of heaven, though I had sworn it. But Lúthien was silent, and from that hour she sang not again in Doriath. A brooding silence fell upon the woods, and the shadows lengthened in the kingdom of Thingol. It is told in the Lay of Lúthien that Beren passed through Doriath unhindered, and came at length to the region of the Twilight Meres and the fens of Sirion, and leaving Thingol's land he climbed the hills above the falls of Sirion, where the river plunged underground with great noise. Thence he looked westward, and through the mist and rains that lay upon those hills he saw Talath Dirnan, the guarded plain, stretching between Sirion and Narog, and beyond he descried afar the highlands of Tol-in-Gaurhoth that rose above Nargothrond, and being destitute, without hope or counsel, he turned his feet thither. Upon all that plain the elves of Nargothrond kept unceasing watch, and every hill upon its borders was crowned with hidden towers, and through all its woods and fields archers ranged secretly and with great craft. Their arrows were sure and deadly, and nothing crept there against their will. Therefore, ere Beren had come far upon his road, they were aware of him, and his death was nigh. But knowing his danger, he held ever aloft the ring of Felagund, and though he saw no living thing, because of the stealth of the hunters, he felt that he was watched, and cried often aloud, I am Beren, son of Barahir, friend of Felagund. Take me to the king. Therefore the hunters slew him not, but assembling they waylaid him and commanded him to halt. But seeing the ring, they bowed before him, though he was in evil plight, wild and wayworn. And they led him northward and westward, going by night lest their paths should be revealed. For at that time there was no ford or bridge over the torrent of Narog, before the gates of Nargothrond. But further to the north, where Gingleth joined Narog, the flood was less. And crossing there and turning again southward, the elves led Beren under the light of the moon to the dark gates of their hidden halls. Thus Beren came before King Finrod Felagund. And Felagund knew him, needing no ring to remind him of the kin of Beor and of Barahir. Behind closed doors they sat, and Beren told of the death of Barahir, and of all that had befallen him in Doriath, and he wept, recalling Lúthien and their joy together. But Felagund heard his tale in wonder and disquiet, and he knew that the oath he had sworn was come upon him for his death, as long before he had foretold to Galadriel. He spoke then to Beren in heaviness of heart. "It is plain that Thingol desires your death, but it seems that this doom goes beyond his purpose, and that the Oath of Fëanor is again at work. For the Silmarils are cursed with an oath of hatred, and he that even names them in desire moves a great power from slumber. And the sons of Fëanor would lay all the elf kingdom in ruin, rather than suffer any other than themselves to win or possess a Silmaril. For the oath drives them. And now Celegorm and Curufin are dwelling in my halls, and though I, Finarfin's son, am king, they have won a strong power in the realm, and lead many of their own people. They have shown friendship to me in every need, but I fear that they will show neither love nor mercy to you, if your quest be told. Yet my own oath holds, and thus we are all ensnared." Then King Felagund spoke before his people, recalling the deeds of Barahir and his vow, and he declared that it was laid upon him to aid the son of Barahir in his need, and he sought the help of his chieftains. Then Celegorm arose amid the throng, and drawing his sword he cried, "Be he friend or foe, whether demon of Morgoth or elf, or child of men, or any other living thing in Arda, neither law, nor love, nor league of hell, nor might of the Valar, nor any power of wizardry shall defend him from the pursuing hate of Fëanor's sons, if he take or find a Silmaril and keep it. For the Silmarils we alone claim until the world ends." Many other words he spoke, as potent as were long before in Tirion the words of his father that first inflamed the Noldor to rebellion. And after Celegorm, Curufin spoke, more softly but with no less power, conjuring in the minds of the elves a vision of war and the ruin of Nargothrond. So great a fear did he set in their hearts that never after until the time of Turin would any elf of that realm go into open battle. But with stealth and ambush, with wizardry and venomed dart, they pursued all strangers, forgetting the bonds of kinship. Thus they fell from the valor and freedom of the elves of old, and their land was darkened. And now they murmured that Finarfin's son was not as a Vala to command them, and they turned their faces from him. But the curse of Mandos came upon the borders, and dark thoughts arose in their hearts, thinking to send forth Felagund alone to his death, and to usurp, it might be, the throne of Nargothrond, for they were of the eldest line of the princes of the Noldor. And Felagund, seeing that he was forsaken, took from his head the silver crown of Nargothrond and cast it at his feet, saying, "Your oaths of faith to me you may break, but I must hold my bond. Yet if there be any on whom the shadow of our curse has not yet fallen, I should find at least a few to follow me, and should not go hence as a beggar that is thrust from the gates." there were 10 that stood by him, and the chief of them, who was named Edrahil, stooped, lifted the crown, and asked that it be given to a steward until Felagund's return. For you remain my king and theirs, whatever betide. Then Felagund gave the crown of Nargothrond to Orodreth, his brother, to govern in his stead. And Celegorm and Curufin said nothing, but they smiled and went from the halls. On an evening of autumn, Felagund and Beren set out from Nargothrond with their 10 companions, and they journeyed beside Nerog to his source in the falls of Ivrin. Beneath the shadowy mountains, they came upon a company of orcs, and slew them all in their camp by night. And they took their gear and their weapons. By the arts of Felagund and their own forms and faces were changed into the likeness of orcs. And thus disguised they came far upon their northern road, and ventured into the western pass, between Eredwethrin and the highlands of Tar-Nifuin. But Sauron in his tower was ware of them, and doubt took him. For they went in haste, and stayed not to report their deeds, as was commanded to all the servants of Morgoth that passed that way. Therefore he sent to waylay them, and bring them before him. Thus befell the contest of Sauron and Felagund, which is renowned. For Felagund strove with Sauron in songs of power, and the power of the king was very great. But Sauron had the mastery, as is told in the Lay of Lúthien. He chanted a song of wizardry, of piercing, opening, of treachery, revealing, uncovering, betraying, then sudden Felagund there swaying, sang in answer a song of staying, resisting, battling against power, of secrets kept, strength like a tower, and trust unbroken, freedom escape, of changing and of shifting shape, of snares eluded, broken traps, the prison opening, the chain that snaps. Backwards and forwards swayed their song, reeling and foundering as ever more strong. The chanting swelled, Felagund fought, and all the magic he might he brought. Of elvenness into his words, softly in the gloom they heard the birds, singing afar in Nargothrond, the sighing of the sea beyond. Beyond the western world on sand of pearls in elven land. Then the gloom gathered, darkness growing, in Valinor the red blood flowing. Beside the sea where the Noldor slew, the foam riders and stealing drew their white ships with their white sails. From lamplit havens the wind wails, the wolf howls, the ravens flee, the ice mutters in the mouths of the sea. The captive sad and Angband mourn, thunder rumbles, the fires burn, and Finrod fell before the throne. Then Sauron stripped from them their disguise, and they stood before him naked and afraid. But though their kinds were revealed, Sauron could not discover their names or their purposes. He cast them therefore into a deep pit, dark and silent, and threatened to slay them cruelly unless one would betray the truth to him. From time to time they saw 2 eyes kindled in the dark, and a werewolf devoured one of the companions, but none betrayed their lord. In the time when Sauron cast Beren into the pit, a weight of horror came upon Lúthien's heart, and going to Melian for counsel, she learned that Beren lay in the dungeons of Tol-in-Gaurhoth, and without hope of rescue. Then Lúthien, perceiving that no help would come from any other on earth, resolved to fly from Doriath and come herself to him. But she sought the aid of Daeron, and he betrayed her purpose to the king. Then Thingol was filled with fear and wonder, and because he would not deprive Lúthien of the lights of heaven, lest she fail and fade, and yet would restrain her, he caused a house to be built, from which she should not escape. Not far from the gates of Menegroth stood the greatest of all the trees in the forests of Neldoreth, and that was a beech forest, and the northern half of the kingdom. This mighty beech was named Hirelorn, and it had 3 trunks, equal in girth, smooth in rind, and exceeding tall. No branches grew from them for a great height above the ground. Far aloft, between the shafts of Hirelorn, a wooden house was built, and there Lúthien was made to dwell, and the ladders were taken away and guarded, save only when the servants of Thingol brought her such things as she needed. It is told in the Lay of Lúthien how she escaped from the house of Hirelorn, for she put forth her arts of enchantment, and caused her hair to grow to great length, and of it she wove a dark robe that wrapped her beauty like a shadow, and it was laden with a spell of sleep. Of the strands that remained she twined a rope, and she let it down from her window, and as the ends swayed above the guards that sat beneath the tree, they fell into a deep slumber. Then Lúthien climbed from her prison, and shrouded in her shadowy cloak, she escaped from all eyes and vanished out of Doriath. It chanced that Celegorm and Curufin went on a hunt through the guarded plain. And this they did because Sauron, being filled with suspicion, sent forth many wolves into the elf lands. Therefore they took their hounds and rode forth. And they thought that ere they returned they might also hear tidings concerning King Felagund. Now the chief of the wolfhounds that followed Celegorm was named Huan. He was not born in Middle-earth, but came from the Blessed Realm, for Orome had given him to Celegorm long ago in Valinor, and there he had followed the horn of his master before evil came. Huan followed Celegorm into exile, and was faithful, and thus he too came under the doom of woe set upon the Noldor, and it was decreed that he should meet death, but not until he encountered the mightiest wolf that had ever walked the world. Huan it was that found Lúthien flying like a shadow, surprised by the daylight under the trees. When Celegorm and Curufin rested a while near the western eaves of Doriath, for nothing could escape the sight and scent of Huan, nor could any enchantment stay him, and he slept not, neither by night nor day. He brought her to Celegorm, and Lúthien, learning that he was a prince of the Noldor and a foe of Morgoth, was glad, and she declared herself, casting aside her cloak. So great was her sudden beauty revealed beneath the sun that Celegorm became enamored of her. But he spoke her fair, and promised that she would find help in her need, if she returned with him now to Nargothrond. By no sign did he reveal that he already knew of Beren and the quest of which she told, nor that it was a matter which touched him near. Thus they broke off the hunt and returned to Nargothrond, and Lúthien was betrayed. For they held her fast, and took away her cloak, and she was not permitted to pass the gates or to speak with any save the brothers, Celegorm and Curufin. For now, believing that Beren and Felagund were prisoners beyond hope of aid, they purposed to let the king perish, and to keep Lúthien, and force Thingol to give her hand to Celegorm. Thus they would advance their power, and become the mightiest of the princes of the Noldor. And they did not purpose to seek the Silmarils by craft or war, or to suffer any others to do so, until they had all the might of the elf kingdoms under their hands. Orodreth had no power to withstand them, for they swayed the hearts of the people of Nargothrond. And Celegorm sent messengers to Thingol, urging his suit. But Huan the Hound was true of heart, and the love of Lúthien had fallen upon him in the first hour of their meeting, and he grieved at her captivity. Therefore he came often to her chamber, and at night he lay before her door, for he felt that evil had come to Nargothrond. Lúthien spoke often to Huan in her loneliness, telling of Beren, who was the friend of all birds and beasts that did not serve Morgoth. And Huan understood all that was said, for he comprehended the speech of all things with voice. But it was permitted to him thrice only ere his death to speak with words. Now Huan devised a plan for the aid of Lúthien, and coming at a time of night, he brought her cloak, and for the first time he spoke, giving her counsel. Then he led her by secret ways out of Nargothrond, and they fled north together. And he humbled his pride and suffered her to ride upon him in the fashion of a steed, even as the orcs did at times upon great wolves. Thus they made great speed, for Huan was swift and tireless. So in summary, Beren journeys into Nargothrond and tells Felagund his story. Felagund sees that the Oath of Fëanor is again at work. Celegorm and Curfin declare that the Silmarils rightly belong to them and oppose Felagund. Darkness falls over Nargothrond, and the threat of treachery looms. Felagund decides to depart with Beren to attempt to steal back the Silmarils. The two of them and several trusted companions disguise themselves as orcs and come to Tol-in-Gaurhoth, Sauron's outpost. He battles Felagund in song and overcomes him, taking Beren and the others captive. Lúthien leaves Doriath, hoping to save Beren from his distress. She is found by Huan, the wolfhound of Celegorm. The sons of Fëanor trick her into returning to Nargothrond and hold her captive there, but she befriends Huan and he helps her escape.
Is it Huan or is it Juan?
It's Huan, like with a J.
Okay. Yeah, no, but it's spelled with an H. And if you pronounce Juan...
I was trying to say Huan. Greg, is it Huan or Juan?
You said Huan. You said Huan the whole time. I was just... Every time I looked at it, I was like, it's like Juan.
I usually say... I thought that when I first read it. I usually say it as Huan, but it does sound like the name Juan.
I was tempted to read the poem with a tune.
You should have.
I think that part's not... I think that
he chanted a song of wizardry, a piercing, opening treachery, revealing and covering, betraying. Suddenly, Felagund is...
Well, I'm glad you didn't.
Yeah. People would have unsubscribed immediately.
Yeah.
We would have lost half of our listeners.
I always kind of feel like we're just one slip up and like everyone's like waiting for just one more thing and they're like, I'm done with this. That would have been it.
Probably.
That would have been it.
Well, this is amazing. The thing that always struck me about Beren was his heroic integrity and just like this is what I need to do to, win Lúthien's hand. So I'm going to do it. And later on, you'll see that integrity at play. He's such a good hero.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Dan is in and out with the Wi-Fi, but yeah, Dan, you look like your pixel count is like 48 pixels by 12. Your you're a Super Mario Nintendo character.
Yeah, that was kind of a long reading, so there's a lot to go through. So he does.
Well, we heard earlier that the Silmarils will basically that the fate of Middle Earth will be tied to the Silmarils.
Right.
And now we're seeing it started with just this love story and then this, commitment that if you want my daughter's hand, bring me a Silmaril. Okay, I'm going to go get a Silmaril. But now this doom has fallen upon Nargothrond, and they're like, the Silmarils are ours. So now there's this treachery happening. You see how this is this ripple effect.
Mm-hmm. I feel like where you really see that too, even in this reading, is later when it talks about the two sons of Fëanor, Celegorm and Lúthien, who are just like terrible. But we'll come to that, I guess. I love this bit here when Beren so he kind of sets out on this journey and he decides to try to find Felagund. And so he's just traveling, and he's all the elves of Nargothrond are like watching him in the shadows, watching him, and he doesn't want them to kill him, so he just holds out the ring and says, the ring of Badahir, and says, "Take me to your king." And he's just wandering. He can't even see them, but he knows that their eyes are on him, and just like, "Don't kill me. I'm not bad."
Yeah, Beren just like moves forward to his goal, knowing that he has to pass through the most dangerous places.
Exactly.
But there's no other way to go. So he's always moving forward. I love that. We saw it when he passed through, the horrors of not Shiloh, but Ungoliant's valley with all these, many-eyed monsters, and he just like, that's where I need to go. So I'm passing through there.
Yeah.
Also, we got confirmation that it was an impossible task that was given to him. When I guess Finrod Felagund says to him, "It's plain that Thingol desires your death."
Mm.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, and then we also get a hearkening back to a conversation we had before about the Silmarils, which we ended up on, like, they are amoral, they are good. But then there's a discussion of the Silmarils are cursed with an oath of hatred, and that he that even names them in desire moves a great power from slumber.
Mm-hmm.
What page are you on?
I don't know.
169. Yeah, it's the middle of 169.
I'm reading from a tablet.
Yeah, so. He that even names them in desire moves a great power from slumber, because of the Oath of Fëanor, and all of the sons of Fëanor all took this oath too.
What chapter and verse is that? Because I feel like Dan's just proof texting right now. Talking. No, you're right. That is a good point. I mean, we did talk about, I thought that the Silmarils were
I don't think it's saying that the Silmarils are bad. I just think it's that they don't know. Because it's more tied to Fëanor.
It's more tied to the Doom of Mandos, right? The oath.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and tied to just the desire of them. Though it's said that, when you bring it up, it moves a great power from slumber. And the sons of Fëanor would rather lay all the elf kingdoms in ruin rather than suffer any other than themselves to win or possess a Silmaril.
Well, here might be the difference between something like the Ring and something like the Silmarils would be if there were no sons of Fëanor and you just had the Silmarils, you wouldn't have the doom of the Noldor upon it. Doom of Mandos, I mean. And so there wouldn't be this like corruption or this disordered attraction to them, I imagine. Whereas the Ring of Power would affect anyone, regardless of their history. It's because of the historic doom laid upon this people because of the oath they took. Mm-hmm. That now it's more of the curse upon the people that is tied to the Silmarils. Yeah. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
There's interestingly though, Felagund himself, I'm pretty sure did not take the oath. Like he did not swear an oath to pursue the Silmarils. So part of what he's saying is about himself. He's saying like, Beren, if you go seek the Silmarils, the sons of Fëanor are going to pursue you because they think they're the rightful owners of the Silmarils. But he's also saying to himself, he didn't take this oath either. And if he does assist Beren, the sons of Fëanor are going to be coming after him too. But it's pretty interesting. Remember we had that conversation between him and Galadriel, and it mentions it in the same paragraph that as he listened to Beren tell his tale, it says he knew that the oath he had sworn was come upon him for his death, as long before he had foretold to Galadriel. So I went back to try to see like, okay, what exactly is that talking about? And that conversation is on page 130 at the very end of chapter 15, where that's the one where Galadriel asks him why he has no wife and everything. And he says, and an oath I too shall swear and must be free to fulfill it and go into darkness. Nor shall anything of my realm endure that a son should inherit. So he knows like he's as much tied into this as anyone else, and he's ready. Like he's pretty much ready to die. Like he's like, I'm just gonna like we're all part of this. I'm going into the darkness, and he perceives that this is kind of that unfolding.
Because how was he made king again? I forget how that happened.
Well, more so because of inheritance. Because I believe he's the eldest son.
Was he the one who just started like picking up the instruments of the men? Who was that?
That's right. That's him. Yeah.
Yeah, and then they crowned him king to them in that moment.
So he's the son of Finarfin, who never came to Middle Earth. If you remember, Finarfin was one of the three sons of Finwë that decided to stay back in Aman. But so many of the others have died now, including Fingolfin, his uncle, who was like the High King of the Noldor. And then some others too, I think. But so he's like one of the he's the king of Nargothrond for sure, but then he's also like the eldest of the Noldor still in Middle Earth.
All right, let's move on to talk about Sauron. He comes back into play. Sauron is one who takes many different forms, many different shapes. So he's not tricked when Beren and Felagund take the form of orcs, which is its own thing. That's interesting.
Yeah, it's like their faces and forms were changed. It's amazing.
Yeah, they turned it. Who has the power to? How did they do that?
Well, it seems like people have a lot of power. I mean, you have Lúthien like growing her hair in a matter of seconds.
So it's probably Felagund's power.
Yeah.
Felagund, who's in Noldor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not Beren, I don't know.
Yeah, by the arts of Felagund, their own forms and faces were changed.
But then Sauron sees them and is like, wait a second. Every orc that comes through my area, like, speaks to me, gives me a report. And I just see these two who pass by an ace. Which the detail that Sauron must see, in his armies, that he sees just two in his armies who quickly come and quickly leave. That's surprising. The eye, right? The watchful, lidless eye that just sees all these things. And then they have a song battle.
Yeah, a rap battle.
Sauron had the mastery, so he's kind of like Eminem, just dissing him hard. So
That's how that worked.
whose song? The song I read was that wasn't one of their songs.
No, it's a
story.
It's like a story about
pubs.
The songs.
Yes.
Yeah, probably in the Shire, the tavern in Bree, when they're going to tell a story, someone would get up and say, "Remember this old story of the greats in the past," and then sing the lay, which would have been haunting and great with a pint of beer. and some sausage and a roaring fire.
And then we get to Luthien, who is like who's the princess that's in the tall tower with the long hair? Rapunzel. She's Rapunzeled a little bit, put in a high tower, can't get down, uses her hair to get down, but her hair has magical powers, including sleep. I thought that was beautiful.
Wait, before we go to Luthien, can I just read this one sentence? It's the very top of 172. It's the last bit about Beren and Felagund getting captured. So them and all their companions are in a dungeon or whatever, and it says, from time to time, they saw two eyes kindled in the dark, and a werewolf devoured one of the companions.
Yeah,
but none betrayed their
lead. Who got eaten?
I think, well, we'll hear more about that, but I think it's saying multiple of the companions. Like every once in a while, they would see the eyes, the wolf would come and eat one of them.
Oh, it wasn't just those two. They were with a company of people.
They were.
Yeah, it was like 12 or something.
Okay, I missed that part, so I just thought that they casually just killed off Felagund.
No,
like,
not quite yet. Not quite
in the dark. Not yet. You just you spoiled it.
Anyway, so they but just the terror but the faithfulness of the men too, or the elves here, like they don't betray, because it says that Sauron couldn't find out their purpose, but they still, even as they're being devoured, they just.
So you have Beren and Felagund, and then 10 that stood by them, his chieftains. Edrahil was one of them. So one of the 10 was devoured. Ugh.
Also, so when Tolkien writes these stories, like you get these really immersively fantastical world building moments where you're just immersed, but then you get taken out of it with little comments. Like in The Lord of the Rings, the ring gets defeated on the 25th of March, which is a date from our world, and they apparently have the same dating system. And then in this one, like just in this reading, we had the quote which Greg already quoted, or someone did. Then Celegorm arose amid the throng, and drawing his sword, he cried, "Be he friend or foe, whether demon or of Morgoth or elf, blah, 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 nor league of hell." Like, apparently they have some concept of, like, damnation or a place where demons live and come from. And I just find it interesting that Tolkien chose to keep, like, certain references of our world in his world building. Do you think that was purposeful or sloppy?
I don't know. It's hard to say because all this is like written over decades and compiled by Christopher Tolkien. So,
and it's not as bad as in the Lord of the Rings movies. The orcs are like, "Meat's looks like meat's back on the menu, boys." It's like, wait,
Applebee's.
Yeah, the orcs have a restaurant.
Yeah.
All right, so we got to wrap it up. But any last thoughts, guys?
I just think Celegorm and Corfin are just terrible. They're so despicable.
They're horrible.
The doom is upon them. They just want the Silmarils more than anything in power.
I do have highlighted things, but I'll just say them and then you can talk about them in Discord. It's prophesied that Huan will die by the mightiest wolf that would ever walk the world. That we'll hear about. And also similar to him, he was permitted only thrice before his death to speak with words.
Yeah.
So we'll have to count
he used
those
one
as
of
we
them.
go.
He used one of them.
Yep. So the first one is talking to Lúthien, right?
Planning the escape. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Yeah.
We'll hear more from him.
Huan the Hound. And
he's my favorite. I said that all the way back in episode 0.
Your name should be something with Huan. But your name is Greg.
I'll work on that.
Doesn't quite fit.
I'll work on that.
All right. Well, there's plenty more to talk about. So join our Discord. Link is in the description. If you like what you hear, go ahead and rate us 3 Silmarils out of 3. Follow us everywhere at Before the Fellowship. And send any comments or questions to beforethefellowship@gmail.com. Join us next week as we read the greatest story you've never heard, The Silmarillion by J.R.R. Tolkien.